and then nitrogen and other ingredient coming from human, fecal matter, and then anaerobically processed, and then we take the soup of the human poop, and then combine this carbon and nitrogen source with the mineral, and then we demonstrated bacteria produce successfully lycopene under microgravity condition.
Welcome to Galaxy Balance, the biofuturism podcast. Here we explore the frontier of biology and AI and ask what it will take technically, ethically, and societally to engineer the next phase of human life. From synthetic embryos to longevity escape velocity, we go beyond the hype to examine what must be true for these breakthroughs to actually happen, and what kind of world we will wake up to if they do. Today on Galaxy Balance, I'm joined by Dr. Tae Seok Moon, a professor at the J. Craig Venter Institute, JCVI, whose work sits at the frontier of systems and synthetic biology, where biology becomes something you can design, debug, and deploy. Tae Seok is also a founder of Moonshot Bio, a CNBIS chair, and EBRC council member, helping shape the synthetic biology community and its next generation of builders. He directs the NSF Global Center Circle, and he's deeply involved in scientific publishing and standard setting across fields, including serving as editor-in-chief of the new biotechnology alongside multiple editorial leadership roles spanning biocatalysis, biofuels, microbial engineering, and sustainable biotechnology. And uniquely for a scientist at his level, Tae Seok is also a YouTube science caster, using video to teach, clarify, and elevate the synthetic biology conversations far beyond the usual academic audience. In this episode, we'll explore what it really means to build smart, programmable biological systems, what's now possible with gene circuits and engineering regulation as it matures, and how this era of writing biology changes everything from sustainability to health. Tae Seok, welcome to Galaxy Balance.
Thank you so much, and it's my honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really interested in learning more about your background. If you could start with what attracted you to science and got you to this point here.
Oh, so you are talking about what attracted me to science. That means, you're talking about my high school year.
Yeah, go back to when
Oh
was
my
that pivotal
gosh.
moment?
All right. So to be honest with you, when I was the high school student, I'm talking about we have the 3-year high school in Korea, and we need to decide in second year the major, or the direction, which direction, STEM or non-STEM. And I wanted to be a writer and a poet, not science at all. And somehow, when I was young, you may think Korea is a rich country, but that's not true. When I was young, I'm talking about, how many years ago? More than more than 35 years ago. Am I right? Yes. More than 35 years ago, we are not that, rich country. And then my parents said, writing poem, interesting, but you may be very hungry. So, so because we are not, rich family, we are just middle class, and then, I decide to do a STEM field. So that's kind of very interesting stuff because most of people in STEM or professor, they love science, but my studies, somehow compromise my future dream. But I excel somehow in science, especially chemistry. So, declare my, direction in chemistry. But again, my parents also convinced me, science, also hungry. You need to do engineering. So at the end of the day, I compromise again because I was good boy, I guess, at the time. So I compromised again, and then I chose the engineering. But my major in college was applied chemistry. So basically, chemistry, heavy chemistry coursework, but applied chemistry. But I love it somehow because the reason I love it is when I was the young, high school student or even middle school student, I keep thinking about why I am here. This is kind of very philosophical question, but I couldn't answer using, social science, the textbook or, any books regarding, humanity books, etc. It couldn't give me answer. But once I kind of become passionate about science and technology, I start to believe in Big Bang theory, and somebody start or some entity start Big Bang, and then molecules started, and then virus and bacteria, and here I am, and evolution. And then that kind of makes every sense. And then I realized, oh, that's why I'm here. And then start to, dig deep into the science, and that's how I am here. And then funny thing is, life is irony. I didn't like biology at all because my high school biology teacher was the worst, I would say. So I said, I'm not going to do biology at all. But in the college year, I start to love organic chemistry. I'm very weird guy. Not many people like organic chemistry, but I love it. And then because of that, I start to take biochemistry, and then I start to take some other course from other department, including microbiology, molecular biology, even cell biology, something like that. And then I start to do my master degree as a biochemical engineer. And then I'm engineer, mindset. After 6 years of the education, I decide to join the company. So I worked for company for many years. And then I luckily promoted very quickly to manager. And then I start to, coordinate the project, like 100 people working together for, clinical trial, preclinical trial. And then, I start to have more time to mentor people. So, and then I realized, oh, I really like the mentoring. And then I realized I need to get the PhD and then need to become professor. And then suddenly I'm here right now. So that's kind of very non-linear trajectory to become professor. And then I realized that's probably the best decision. Or my parents already knew about me better than myself, and then I really appreciated their guidance so far.
That's a really interesting path, Tay. And I like your question, why am I here? I've thought about it a lot. And a simple
Right.
answer might be if I wasn't here, I couldn't ask the question. But just more
Mm.
fundamentally on physics,
Right.
why is matter here? Why is
Right.
energy here? And biology, why is life here? Why does intelligent life evolve? Very interesting,
Absolutely.
deep philosophical question. So
Right.
I think it's great that you started not directly in the science path, that you wanted the poetry. And I think where we're at now with biology and synthetic biology, we're now at the point that it's almost like poetry for DNA is the point we're
Mm-hmm.
at now. So do you find your loop, your arc coming back to poetry somewhat?
You know what? That's a very interesting point. One day actually I tried to define synthetic biology. So I kind of use the literature in a sense, in an analogy. So, let me put it this way. So I start with the DNA helix discovery, and I call it the moment people start to see letter because we start to see ATGC, the four letters in biology, and then start to understand the biology. And then later on, I kind of talking about we start to know how to read the letters by the DNA sequencing. Of course, that is the pioneered by the Craig Venter many years ago. And then I start to say, people start to write. That is the basically, DNA synthesis technology that basically drive the synthetic biology starting 2000 or early 2000 around that time. And then I start to say, people start to edit. But the problem I'm going to say, at that time I was naive. I even said, now it's time to write poem. Poem means, I mean, the real creation using synthesis technology, making genetic circuit, making something. But now I realize we are not near writing poem stage because we just know how to copy in a gigantic scale. I'm talking about entire genome scale synthesis that is done by multiple group or editing, but editing means just typo checking or
Yeah.
some words changing to the other one, stop codon remove from the entire genome. But that's just editing, very small scale compared to the literature or real creative writer doing. Because we are not really creating something, we are just copy and paste from the already millions of the masterpiece in the nature, and then we just about to write something, and then now I start to say we probably start to creating something using AI, de novo design, AlphaFold, Rogera, and we start to just design one protein. To me, that's just one word, not even point. But I'm very excited because we are going that direction finally. So if you kind of ask that question, I will say this is probably my answer.
That's a great metaphor, and I do agree. Mostly stitching together,
Yeah,
rewording, than making new poetry. But glad that we're making new words.
yeah.
And since you brought up Craig Venter, I'd like to dig into his past. He's been so influential, as you say, in DNA sequencing, revolutionary, and in the Human Genome Project, when the government based approach really was thinking of bacterial assembly and this slow approach. He really advocated whole genome sequencing, shotgun sequencing, which is the way we all do it now. And I personally was attracted to his institute, worked there briefly for an internship. I'm glad that
Mhm.
you're a professor there. I wonder if you could dive a little bit into your Craig Venter's influence on you and his institute.
So he is uh, obviously the pioneer in DNA sequencing and also the I would say the synthetic synthetic cell creation. But I would not say he created any synthetic cell yet because the one uh, they we develop I mean they developed because I was not there when they you know basically made the first so-called synthetic cell that is basically copy and paste gigantic scale, and then they made the that bacteria basically reboot using the synthetic chromosome. But that blew my mind. That's a 2010 that blew my mind because the scale and the entire genome synthesized and then put it into the bacteria, sense kind of dead bacteria without chromosome, and then reboot. And that is something like, not many people thought about before, even though I'm not saying this is creation. So I realized, wow, this is crazy. And then 2 years later, I start to have my course because I start to my position as a professor in another university, and I start to think about how can we even go beyond like just copy and paste and then doing real synthetic cell creation, etc. in the future. So after around 12 years later, I decided to join Craft Institute because I love crazy science kind of project, kind of blue mind, and then out of pocket type of an idea, and then because that basically benefit a lot of people if we kind of implement in a very careful way, because a lot of innovation, a lot of breakthrough benefit us, including ChatGPT, vaccine. antibiotics, etc. But at the same time, there are some side effects. Both, but as long as we kind of develop those things in a careful way, I believe a lot of people will be saved and a lot of benefit will have. So that's why I joined the group or institute. We can work together because with collaboration we can achieve a lot of great things. So that's why I joined that institute
Yeah, a lot of great
2 years
work
ago.
there. Glad that you're there too. And you brought up the synthetic genome, very pivotal point. I was there right before
Hmm.
they booted it up. But to clarify for the audience, this is essentially the reverse of DNA sequencing. They take sequencing, you find a bacteria, you take that DNA and turn it into information in the computer. This does the opposite. You take information in a computer, a digital genome, and you can bring about a physical DNA molecule. And I completely agree with you, Tae, that it's not a synthetic cell. It's perhaps a cell
No.
running a synthetic genome, but it's not even a really synthetic, it's just a copy of it. They watermarked it with a little note with the author's names and such, but that's really just a
Hmm.
footnote added into it. But later, they made the minimal cell, minimal genome,
Yes.
where they took away parts of it, took away genes, so it's really a great chassis they created
Right.
for biological discovery. And where do you see the futures of that project? So for now, our ability to make synthetic genomes, we're starting to understand perhaps how to tweak a word or maybe make up some new words of our own. Where do you see that project at the JCVI now?
So JCBI is a very interesting institute. We have the maximum freedom, meaning I could do anything I am interested in. So I am not involved in that synthetic cell creation project in a sense, but I can kind of give some sneak peek what they are currently doing. They wanted to do their creation for the first time. That means they wanted to synthesize the same way they synthesize entire genome, and then using a lipid bilayer, and then put it into the lipid bilayer, and then they want those entity become
Ah,
replicate. So this is a
fascinating.
crazy idea.
Yeah, so truly a synthetic cell.
Yeah, that's truly synthetic, cell. I do agree for the first time with Craig Venter regarding that aspect. And if that is possible, I would say that is the first synthetic cell human created.
Yeah,
But you need to
fascinating.
understand, ethical safety issue. So that is also we discuss every single day with the people. I'm also kind of person, you know, sitting in the opposite side to kind of make the balanced kind of development. So my boss, John Glass, he actually working on that project. I keep, discussing with him. Okay, John, you need to kind of make sure, this is not making other people worry about, ethical problem, also safety problem, security problem, etc. So we constantly discussing about that project.
Exciting. And you mentioned that you did recently publish a work within the last year or so on astrobiology. This is of great
Right.
interest to the channel. Would you mind walking us through some of your work on microbes in space and some of the applications?
Sure. My last name is Moon. Somehow always fascinated by the stars in the sky, and then even when I was very young. And then I wonder why not? I could go to the moon one day, someday. So I that was my dream project, and we got the money from DARPA, and the project is basically, as you can imagine, we wanted to go to the moon or Mars, but the problem is to go there, we need to minimize, packing, because you cannot pack, tons of glucose, tons of whatever food, because that's impossible, because the light packing, it kind of is kind of the key to go to all the way to Mars or beyond. So the idea is, in that case, how can we biomanufacture some, food or some ingredients, something we need, astronaut need, I mean, over there. So So they, NASA actually recommend astronaut taking lycopene. That's a carotenoid. That's a very important compound because that's an antioxidant, and also that kind of prevent astronaut losing bone density because over there are multiple problems, gamma ray destroying the tissues, muscle, etc., including bone. And also the other things, a lot of gamma ray also kind of generate a lot of oxygen, and then they need the antioxidant. The lycopene actually, you can find lycopene from the tomato, but you cannot bring tomato up there. You could bring the tomato seed, but that takes months to get the tomato out of the planting and whatever. So we decided to make the lycopene by using bacteria in the space in the future. The other reason is you could bring the lycopene pill, small supplement, but the problem is that also has the shorter expiration date because the a lot of gamma ray radiation up there. So the best way is in situ production. If
Yep.
the in situ production happening within a few days, and then you can in that way you can take that one. So our idea was, okay, we cannot bring the glucose over there. What kind of resources we have over there? I'm talking about space. And then realize we have a lot of interesting, the resources over there on the surface of the moon or on the surface of the Mars. There are plenty of the, minerals, in other words, rigorous, and then we can use that mineral as a one of the component for the nutrient for the bacteria growth. And then you need at least two different another main nutrient, that's a carbon source and nitrogen source. Right now, carbon source we use is plastic. Astronaut using a lot of plastic because that's a light. That means that's very important. You can bring some, plastic over there for the use. But currently the problem is they just, single use and then burn it and then pollute, basically contaminate the space, just releasing that whatever the plastic waste. Uh, so we decide to use that as a carbon source. And the other one is the nitrogen source, and they also generate a lot of waste. I'm talking about human feces. I'm so sorry. I mean, just after your lunchtime, I'm talking about poop. But that is another problem they need to deal with. So right now, I believe they dry and then burn it, and then also contaminate the entire space. So we realize why not, because poop, human poop contain a lot of nitrogen. So what we did is carbon coming from the plastic, and then nitrogen and other ingredient coming from human, fecal matter, and then anaerobically, processed, and then we take the soup of the human poop, and then combine this carbon and nitrogen source with the mineral, and then we demonstrated bacteria produce successfully lycopene under microgravity condition. And then we published the paper in Nature Communication, I think last year.
Fascinating. Plastic plus poop, all you need, apparently.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's the waste we, astronaut generating. And then mineral, we didn't use the mineral from the Mars and Moon because that's very rare, very expensive, but we know the composition. So we basically mimic whatever composition over there, and then we found that is working for the my bacteria. So that is a amazing moment to us, finally successfully done that one.
Interesting. And how did you simulate microgravity? Did you try to mimic the moon or Mars, some of your top targets? And how do you visualize
Yeah,
this actually playing out?
we basically using the machine in not the the space, we actually on Earth we actually use the machine that mimicking the microgravity condition using some I don't know how that works because it's my collaborator basically helping me, but some if you kind of make the machine structure and the rotation speed just right way, and then that kind of generating the microgravity condition. That's what I know, but I don't know the more than that because that's a lot of physics, I guess. But that's how we generate the microgravity.
And are you still engaged in perhaps implementing some of this with the push to now go to the moon or establish a moon base, and with Elon Musk and other initiative to go to Mars? Where do you see where's the going to be the trial for these new bacteria?
Absolutely. So we are preparing. Actually, we are talking to some people, and including NASA people, last year around I think January or February time, because we finished it that one and then published, and then we are talking about sending the bacteria to uh, ISS, the International Space Station. And then unfortunately, around that time, NASA hit heavy, and then the conversation just stopped. So
Yeah.
now we are looking for the private, kind of entity who has, access to those kind of spaceship launching to the ISS. And then now I kind of talking to, and then actually I went to Korea because they have some company, they actually sending some bacteria sample or whatever sample to the ISS. So eventually, we will do so.
Yeah, and they do eventually plan to decommission the ISS now. I know it's near the end of its
Right,
life, and we'll have to
right.
hopefully get another space station or one around the
Sure.
moon, with the
Yeah,
Deep Space Gateway, lots of exciting plans. And with reusable rockets, this is an exciting field. And as you hit on,
absolutely.
in situ resource utilization is key. My previous guest, Devin Stork from Pioneer Labs, really went through their approach to evolve these bacterias for new functions, and I think that'll be key. As you mentioned, weight is the limit. You can't take everything with you. It's what you can make there.
One thing I want to mention for the audience, general audience, you may say, I'm not gonna take lycopene out of my poop, right? So, but let me put it this way. So I listened to one of the astronaut who basically spent like 300 days a year in the ISS doing a lot of experiment, including the sequencing over there. And then she was the first person who do pipetting in ISS. Can
Ah,
you imagine pipetting in ISS?
yeah.
She's amazing. So I listened to her talk one of the event because she was a keynote speaker, and I publicly, asked question to her. Okay, we have the technology to produce lycopene out of potentially your poop. Are you willing to take that lycopene? And then she said, without any reservation, any hesitation, she said, yes,
Yes.
I'm happy to take that on because astronauts know how severe the health impact living in the over there. So she said, but the thing is, we already, taking water that coming from all the
Sure.
purification, all the dirty water, and then that contain poop, our poop, and
Yeah.
that astronaut recycle their own urine to take the water. And then why not? So this is a very interesting perception change. And to me, and then I realized, okay, why not? I can do that. And I want to go to the moon one day as my vacation and taking my own urine, taking my own poop, and then I want to survive over there. So that's the point I want to make.
Yeah, I think astronauts have already crossed that bridge. They realize you have to use
Absolutely.
your urine, you have to use your
Absolutely.
feces, your sweat,
Yeah.
anything you go off,
Yeah.
they're into using that. And one of my first guests, George Church, brought this up of the challenge of closed ecosystems. We've tried it here with the Biosphere 2 project, very challenging at the microbial scale, the environmental engineering scale. Earth is the only stable biosphere we know. And I think that's a
Hmm.
huge frontier for microbiology to set about sustainable closed ecosystems.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on any of the leaders in this field or what we need to do to establish this for space travel?
Absolutely. So, the Georgia Church and other pioneer is absolutely right, and I agree with them. But I see the space, microbiology or space biotechnology project as their important, approach leading to the solution we currently have on Earth. Let me put it this way, very simple way. So I talk about already resource limitation. Resource limitation we have right now on Earth. And then war happening right now. We are now talking about shortage of the petroleum, natural gas, etc. But that is not just today's kind of problem. That's already happened many, years ago, many decades ago. So resource limitation, we talking about in the space, you know, we having that problem for many years. And then I talking about pollution, and also waste problem. That is the, huge problem, global problem we currently having on Earth. So thinking about space problem, not only solving the space exploration problem, but also solving our planet's problem we currently having, plastic pollution, you know, also potentially, some regeneration or the valorization of the waste, etc. And that is actually the current, problem we have. That's why I started Global Center, basically focusing on valorization of the waste into a kind of whatever compound we wanted to generate. And that is actually collaboration project from the researcher from 6 different countries. Currently, we are involved here.
Excellent. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about Resource Center and Moonshot Bio. You mentioned you've been
Sure.
funded by DARPA. I love these grand challenges or moonshots. And how can we bring about scientists and resources to achieve these great goals?
Sure. So let me start with the my personal, dream. I have been thinking about for multiple decades. So when I start my position as a professor, I want to solve 10 global problems. I'm not talking about small project. I'm talking about 10 gigantic global problems, including climate crisis, pollution problem, medicine problem, pandemic problem, and also agricultural problem and food shortage, etc. So I have the 10, I identified 10 global problems I want to solve. And then now I realize after I becoming 50 years old, a few years ago, how can I solve any of the problem? Because this is so gigantic, so complex problem.
Yeah.
Even I focus on one problem, it's probably almost impossible to solve any one problem myself. Even 20 more years I spending my time. The problem of myself is I interested in many different problems at the same time. So this is impossible. But one day I realized if I collaborate with many different people who interested in one single problem together, I'm talking about 40 different investigators and more than 20 companies working together to solve one single problem, in this case, waste problem. And I do believe 20 years from now, even 5 years from now, we will be able to solve at least one waste problem because we are talking about 40 different investigators. That means the multiple hundreds of the graduate student and postdoc, and then 20 companies means thousands of the employee working on one problem, and we will be able to solve that problem. And that's my approach right now. So that is a global center I'm currently, leading as a director. And then we actually recently met to lay out the roadmap about how we need to go next 5 years and next 10 years to solve that problem. And this is all about the waste conversion, including CO2 gas and also the food waste, agricultural waste, plastic waste, etc., any waste you could think of, and then that converting into high value materials and chemicals, and then that's what we'll need to do. And also, of course, the most importantly, education, generating next workforce working on that problem, and then in that way they become the better leaders, and then making all those problem go away by implementing whatever technology careful way and sustainable way. So that's the project we are currently working on
I think
with
that's
the NSF funding and then multiple other countries funding.
excellent initiative and a grand challenge for waste management. Do you also think of rare things like forever chemicals or PFAS? These type of one is just total waste, like CO2 waste, other massive waste, human waste, but another is perhaps rare industrial chemicals that might be coming off. What?
Absolutely. So I'm personally very interested in those kind of very toxic chemical. So that's actually exactly the work I done more than 10 years, but not specifically PFAS, but I'm very interested in kind of toxic chemical like phenolic compound because that kind of causing a lot of cancer. And then now, another, interesting, waste is the electronic waste that also even contain the rare earth element. So we can harness bacteria or weird microbe to extract those kind of rare earth elements. So that actually I'm very interested in. Actually, we started and we will start if there's some funding coming in. So that's some direction I want to go in. Next 10 years. So very important problem. We have the more problem to solve than our imagination, I guess.
Yeah, so much for us to do. And I'm very influenced by science fiction, and in some stories, actually, the garbage dumps become mines in the future because of rare earth minerals, electronic waste. Essentially, they're a resource into the future, and I think
Right.
we're throwing away a lot of stuff that has a
Sure.
that's rare here. So, with that, how has science fiction influenced you? Do you look to TV or movies or books that have influenced your role of science?
Yeah, to be honest with you, when I was young, I read a lot of books and science fiction. Nowadays, I have limited time, but I do watch movies because that's the quick and efficient to observe new thing. But you know what the one we watch or what the one we read in the past becoming reality right now.
Yes.
And then that is scary, at the same time very exciting. And then one thing, the best movie I love, the favorite movie I love is the called Matrix. I'm not sure the audience, if they are young, know about that movie. I think that came out the year 2000 or 1999, something around that time.
Yep.
Oh my God, that blew my mind. That's about the AI dominating an entire world, and then human become the slave or become one single in a battery. And then, but though that may happen in the future, but at the same time, that is kind of the currently AI is just going into. So those, and then, but in that one also showing a lot of the new technology. So that kind of influenced me a lot. Also, that contain a lot of philosophical questions about human existence and a lot of different philosophical ideas, including Oriental philosophy. And that's my favorite, the movie or sci-fi movie, I would say.
Yeah, Matrix is very influential and brings up the simulation hypothesis, kind of from a different
Yes.
angle. But what if reality is not what we think and what we perceive. Back to that first
Right.
question, why are we here? So fascinating
Right.
movie for sure. Uh,
Yeah.
Great. And have you a movie I'd recommend that's coming out is Project Hail Mary. Are you familiar with this? It was a book.
Oh, I heard about it, but I do not have the time to,
Yeah, but
read that.
he's an employee of NASA. He's an engineer, very based, and essentially there are microbes in space called astrophage that eat the sun, take the energy from the sun. And humanity
Oh, I
must come
see.
together to figure this out. It's very interesting science fiction of a microbe that not only lives in space but can propel through space based on some
Ah,
very real physics concepts. So recommended
I
to
see.
everyone. I haven't seen the movie personally, but the book is excellent, and I'm very excited
Sure.
about the movie coming out. Great. So one segue, you brought this up a little bit of AI in bio. That this is perhaps letting us make new words, perhaps not just copying, but now getting into some new space in the language of DNA. What is your take on some of the new tools that are coming out, and how can biologists use these new tools to eventually get towards poetry of DNA?
Yeah, so that's a very exciting kind of direction I'm currently seeing. I'm not the AI expert, to be honest with you, but I'm using AI a lot
Yeah.
regarding AlphaFold, Rosetta, or some new range, model for my research. But this is the synergy or collaboration I was talking about earlier. So now biologists start to understand even computer science people also collaborating with the biology people, and then that kind of generating new innovation, I believe. And then this is inevitable. To be honest with you, I never used ChatGPT. The reason was I worry about being addicted to ChatGPT because I am, as you can imagine, I'm not native speaker. English was always my biggest problem or challenges, but I don't want to kind of keep using whatever the new device kind of telling me this is the best sentence, best kind of paragraph. If I kind of keep using, I probably will be addicted to that one. But to me, the most important skill set, scientist or anybody should, acquire is how to express their idea effectively and, good way. But using those things, probably make people not, able to, kind of develop that skill set, including you can basically, tell, from your experience. I used to be very good at calculating or just mathematics in my head. Now I cannot do that. Simple,
Yeah.
addition, subtraction. I cannot do that because I start to use my calculator
Yep.
starting my time in America. So if I use the ChatGPT, probably I will become the same type of person. I cannot write even one sentence without asking ChatGPT. So I never use it, but I know how important. And then this is inevitable. People we already use, probably almost all people using ChatGPT or any other model for the writing. And then even creating the movies. I was so
Yeah.
shocked. The movie basically two actors fighting each other. I thought that's a real movie coming in this summer, and then that's already happening. So biology should adopt those kind of AI technology to make the new innovation. But we also think about what is the consequence, including some negative impact. So, but I'm very excited regarding that one.
Yeah, I do agree. There's a concern of atrophy of skills that you don't use anymore. You brought up
Right.
math with the calculator. Another movie more for kids is Wally. In this movie,
Yes.
Humans have polluted the earth and no one can live on the earth. They're all in space stations, but they've all
Right.
become totally dependent on robots. They just lie
Uh-huh.
back in their chairs, they're fat, they
Right.
don't move. It like puts the
Yeah.
food in their mouth and essentially it
Yes.
does everything for them, and now they've lost the will, the drive. And Isaac
Yes.
Asimov wrote about this, another great
Uh-huh.
influential science fiction thinker. Essentially, he
Sure.
had a world that split off and they became so dependent on robots. They had 10,000
Absolutely.
robots per person that they were the best at one time, the peak of humanity, but they lost
Yeah.
all drive to further
Yeah.
out. And I think that's a great. So, how do you think about defining human uniqueness in further scientific endeavors? What do you think we are exceptionally good at? How can we excel in this time when many have offboarded their talent to AI?
So that is the probably the most difficult question you ask. I thought up until recently, uh, creativity and imagination might be the one AI cannot mimic. But their learning speed is so fast. And then now I start to worry about whether that is a real thing. Because still they are not there, the AI is not there yet. Because the human creativity, even just writing very amazing sentences, or thinking about something crazy coming from the human, and AI just kind of synthesize all the information out there. But one day, it might be possible for AI to kind of excel in that area. But I hope human creativity might be the last one AI cannot simulate. I hope.
Yeah, it's a question I hope as well. It's how much will we be co-pilots or co-partners with this
Yeah.
AI we're developing, or can it fully replace us? And back to your first thought of the Big Bang and matter forming,
Mhm.
life forming. In some ways, we're birthing in a next phase of matter and energy, and robotics plus AI clearly is a new entity that's emerging and not
Mhm.
fully the ability to self replicate yet, but it seems that all trends, it will be able to fully self replicate from in situ
Mhm.
resources to the von Neumann probe. He came up with this idea of sending a probe out that could acquire resources and build more of
Mhm.
itself. And
Absolutely.
in some ways, it's kind of beautiful to see this next evolution, but hopefully we hope as humans that we can play some significant role, and I think those who can elevate their unique human skills and learn to leverage and use AI, at least for the
Mhm.
medium term, short term, that will
Mhm.
outcompete any pure AI.
Yeah, and then another thing might be, this is not science related, but real emotion, real, feeling or motivation. Those things probably AI cannot simulate because we human become very powerful when we are motivated or when we loved. But AI is kind of programmed to show that whatever love, but that is to me a little bit fake programmed kind of one. So that's probably different from the love I getting from my wife or the motivation I got from my advisor and then the encouragement I'm giving to my student because we feel it by heart rather than by brain. And I believe that is probably the another thing AI cannot simulate or mimic. And that's probably the last thing, I guess. That's not necessarily science related, but probably make human unique.
Yeah, and they may mimic signs of it, signs of love, signs of emotion, but the
Right.
true emotion, do they
Through
have that?
emotion.
And that's key to what you said before of that's why you don't use ChatGPT, your
Yeah,
ability to communicate ideas clearly. And AI
yeah,
can communicate clearly, but to
yeah,
anyone who reads, there are hallmarks. You can still tell, even though it looks beautiful in many ways.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
spot it, like the M
yeah,
dashes, the it's not
yeah,
X, it's Y. There's certain
yeah,
things that I'm sure that will get much better and almost unnoticeable into the
yeah,
future. But the true human connection and genuine story of a storyteller, both in
yeah.
science and in broad fields, I think that's critical to maintain.
Yeah. So that's the thing exactly. So just give some idea. If some beautiful AI say I love you, I I I feel like, oh my God, it's beautiful, but I probably don't feel the sincere kind of, the thing. I mean, so my gut feeling say, oh, this is just robot program to seduce me rather than that robot kind of really love me. So that's probably my will be my feeling, I guess. Even though there's a beautiful like actress like or supermodel like robot. So and then but still my the wife almost 50 years old say I love you. I know that's true. The sincere
Yeah,
expression. So that's the difference, I guess.
you could tell the difference,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, wanted to segue a little bit into talked about scientific communication, but talk about publication. Science is
Hmm.
still largely using a system from 100 years ago of peer review. You've played a big role in editing the scientific record. I'd like to talk to you. There have been questions of the current publishers have such a high profit margin, they don't pay their peer reviewers. Many challenges have been raised with the way we currently do things. And then most people who pay for the research can't read it because it's behind a paywall. How do you see the way we publish and peer review changing in the future to fit the current times?
That is the most problematic issues in academia. I definitely say that because the reason I become editor of 10 journal because I'm sick and tired of this nonsense.
Yeah,
You're talking about just you to summarize beautifully. I mean, reviewer not paid. You know, right now I'm reviewing for 6 journal. I even though I decline a lot, I only review for journal like PNAS or the quality beyond PNAS. But now I'm reviewing for 2 Nature journal, 2 Cell journal, 1 Science journal, and plus biology. Spending my own time sleeping 4 to 5 hours a day, and I'm not getting nothing, right?
yeah,
And then how can we convince reviewers work for us? This is a bad or worst business model,
yeah,
but as publisher basically continue do so, and then now they have the open access, the fee on the author, and then the fee is something like even more than ten
yeah.
thousand dollar. And then do you know how much the professional editor getting?
No, I don't. How much?
They only got a little bit more than postdoctoral salary, the US postdoctoral salary, a little bit more than that. And then so I know because I even apply for the job for the professional journal, like I'm talking about Nature journal, Cell journal, etc.
Yeah, that's why
And then
the,
I
the the journals companies have some of the highest profit margins.
right. So we need to change. We need to change. So reviewers should have at least some, I don't know. I mean, not necessarily financial reward, but they need to get something out of that, service because this is the extra hours of
Yeah,
service for peer review. And then editor should be treated better. I'm not talking about my editor. I'm not the professional editor. I'm just doing, extra hours,
yeah,
mostly in the morning at very late night. That's a different one, but they need to pay better. And then they should have more budget for the conference attending. their budget is very limited, and the but editor job is kind of see the field clear way, in that way shaping the field by accepting the paper that is trendy, also very important, landmark, but
Yeah.
they don't have enough money to go to the conference. That's the problem. So I joined as an editor to change the culture. I currently doing so, but one editor cannot change the entire publishing culture. And then another problem you didn't bring up is many people, in academia coming from the big lab, like George Church, Jim Collins, Jay Kisling. When they are their lab, the publishing is much easier
Yes.
compared to the paper they submit for the first time as an independent PI.
Yes.
Why? That's another problem. There are multiple reasons. Academic people are so busy. And then when they see the name like George Church, they kind of become easygoing person,
Yes.
unfortunately. If you see the paper coming from somebody unknown, and they suddenly become harsh. Why?
Yeah. Well,
Of course, I mean,
maybe the author should be blinded then for the peer reviewers.
yeah, but there are multiple problems in the academia, and then I try to change the culture. At the end of the day, the people who need the paper the most is a junior faculty.
Yes.
For their promotion to build up their career, we need to take care of those young people to make the science moving forward. And then they are the people working hard, probably the hardest, but we basically make their morale go down as an editor or reviewers. I believe we need to change the mindset. That's why I start my editor job to potentially help young people and then, probably making their life easier and the whole fair process of the review process or entire editorial process. But I'm not the nature journal editor. I'm not the cell journal editor. I'm not the science journal editor. And then I only just have the specialized journal, that not necessarily helping the young people, rising stars in some way. But I hope, I mean, some editor understand, and I do know some editor, my good colleague, promote those kind of young, generation, new rising stars paper more seriously than other editor. And I actually appreciate those editor, even though their salary is very low, but they kind of shaping the world.
Yeah.
But I hope that happen more.
Yeah, I agree. We need to support those junior faculty members. And also
Absolutely.
thank you for training AI. There's a certain gatekeeper. I've seen many that get rejected because they're not interesting or won't impact the field enough. I saw a recent Nobel laureate. His paper got rejected because they said it wasn't impactful enough. And then later it won the Nobel Prize. So clearly, editors are
Absolutely.
not the best at being that gatekeeper for what is
Yeah.
actually interesting or impactful.
You know what? The one good thing is, I was involved in one review in a very high profile journal. I saw current Nobel laureate, the person's paper rejected. At that time, I was surprised because to me, I mean, that was a great one, but still, some rivalry. Probably reviewer kind of reject that one, but
Yeah.
that happens. So the review process, I mean, one day, probably, I don't know, I mean, someday, will completely change. Right now, the problem we're seeing is, as an editor, I see the quality of paper tremendously improve just after ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then the AI's, development speed is so fast. And then publisher, even though they have a lot of revenue, when I talk to them, they do not have the good program to detect those kind of ChatGPT or AI generated manuscript unless they have some, interesting fake, image or some, sentences coming from, very obvious one, but we don't have those kind of programs. So that's a problem. And then we also see, start to see reviewers using
Yeah, reviewed. It's written by AI,
ChatGPT
reviewed by AI.
and then return the review within 10 minutes. That's clear problem as you can imagine.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I mean, this is coming too fast and then quickly evolving too fast. In the future, probably people submit paper using ChatGPT or whatever AI tool, reviewed by the AI, and then publishing, even proposal review, everything. I see those kind of coming right now.
yeah. From new papers to job applications, it seems it's AI talking to itself on both sides for a
Right.
majority of
But that's already
things.
happening. AI doing
Yeah,
interview.
yeah, yeah. I've heard people, not even a person there to review it and record with AI, but AI is actually the interviewer.
Yeah, and AI is an interview. I already, heard about it, and then that is, already happening right now. So world is changing so quickly, and then we need, I do hope our young generation not much, impacted by, those kind of new change, and I hope those people kind of survive, you know.
Yeah.
So that's some problem we have,
Good
unfortunately.
segue. I always like to close with what advice would you give to college age students interested in what we're talking about, interested in becoming a scientist? With all these changes, how can they keep up? How can they distinguish themselves?
That is a great question. I honestly don't know the practical answer anymore because I used to have a lot of, advice I could give, but the current speed, comparing 2 years ago and now, very difficult. But no, one thing I want to say, this is not direct answer, but, probably the best answer, uh, to me. So I used to ask question to young people when they ask, and then when I start the conversation, what's next? That means what do you want to do next?
Yep.
And then I start to have the conversation, and then but I realize that's the worst question ever I ask because that giving a lot of pressure to young people because they don't know the future. And then under current situation in AI potentially taking their jobs, and then a lot of competitive kind of situation, economic down, and not many job out there, COVID hit us, etc. Political situation, remove all the jobs, etc. It's kind of very gloomy,
Yeah.
period. But now I changed my question to different one, and then that question is sound like this: What makes you happy? And just think about that. It doesn't necessarily need to be high-paying job as long as you are happy with that job. And then the important thing you need to think about is over the many centuries and many years, scientists and engineers literally benefit entire world and saving a lot of people. Vaccine developed and then a lot of people saved. Antibiotics saved a lot of people. Agricultural revolution basically make a lot of people at least getting food in some developed country. Of course, still developing country like Africa, they don't have enough food. But technology and science is key to solving this kind of the global problem. And then young people and the next generation leaders, basically the player to implement those things, including you, Corey. Because the reason I believe you started this podcast is probably encourage and promote and science and also, inspire young people to get into the STEM field, I believe. And that's why you start to do so, your, weekend time because you have the daytime job. So I really admire what you are doing right now. But one thing I want to say is, even if all the challenges we have, don't give up and dream high, and then you will become the leaders one day and someday, and that's one thing I want to say.
Yeah, great
And
advice,
right now
Tae.
it's
Well, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, great advice. I fully believe that, yes, I want to inspire people into STEM and that through engineering, through science, that's how we're going to better the human condition and better things for
Yeah.
us, discover about ourselves and the world, and why I wanted to show people what's out there and what are the possibilities and how they can get involved.
So if you allow me, I want to add one more example, and then I finish,
Yeah.
whatever my, kind of advice. I had one student originally from Africa, and then suffer from entire, discrimination problem in this country when he was the student. And he was almost kicked out of the university because of the discrimination issue. I'm talking about racial discrimination at the university I used to work for. But he endured. He never gave up. And then he dreamed high because to give some idea, he didn't have electricity at home in Africa. He lost two brothers because of hunger and disease. He still have the mom suffering from cancer. But he wanted to solve that problem, cancer problem, disease problem, based on his horrible news or experience he had in Africa. He never gave up, even though he had unacceptable discrimination in the university. But at the end of the day, he succeed overcoming everything by joining Pfizer, many years of the struggle. And then guess what? He joined Pfizer 2020. And do you have any idea what happened to
Did
him?
he help develop the RNA vaccines or some with those?
He not only helped, he basically lead the team because he joined the Pfizer at the right time with the right skill set and right place. And then he delivered the first COVID vaccine at Pfizer and he became world hero.
Wow.
The reason I'm mentioning that one is we are living in very interesting world, very competitive, a lot of pressure, going into young people's mind, and this is very depressing. However, this person survived all the problem, all the discrimination, all the the hurdles, and then became the world hero, making huge impact entire world he never imagined. Why not? You could do so because you have passion, you have dream. As long as you never give up, you will be one day become better leaders. In that way, benefit entire world. And that is one last point I want to make because that is probably the most important thing I wanted to achieve next 20 years above pollution problem solving.
Well, excellent story of resiliency and overcoming adversity, and really, really deep, heartfelt story. But we're
Sure,
at the end here. Thank you so much, Tay, for taking the
sure,
time to share your work and your perspective. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and really what you're doing for the field and helping
sure.
science communication, publication, and your work at the JCVI. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is such a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Bye, Tay.